What is this? Nurse Chidinma exclaimed as she saw the unthinkable in between her legs. I need to call the doctor immediately, and she hurried out panting and her heart racing. Nurse Chidinma had seen many things in her career as a nurse: gunshot wounds, childbirths, and even moments that made her question the boundaries between science and the unknown. But nothing could prepare her for what she was about to encounter that night. It started like any other shift, quiet at first, with only the soft hum of the hospital's fluorescent lights and the distant murmuring of patients in their rooms. The silence was interrupted by the sharp ring of the emergency bell. A family had just rushed in, their voices urgent, their movements frantic. At the center of the chaos was a young girl, no older than 16, lying limp on a stretcher. Her skin glistened with sweat, her breathing shallow. Her mother gripped her hand tightly, whispering prayers under her breath, while her father backed orders at no one in particular. It was clear they were desperate. As Chidinma approached, her calm demeanor never wavered, though her mind raced. She asked the standard questions: what happened? How long has she been like this? The mother stammered, her words barely coherent. She started feeling weak last week. Then today, she collapsed. Please, help her. The father, on the other hand, stood back, his face hard and unreadable. Something about his silence felt heavy, as if he were holding back words that could shatter the air around them. Chidinma focused on the girl. Kemi, they called her. She looked so small and fragile on the stretcher. Her eyes fluttered weakly, as if she was trying to stay awake but couldn't summon the strength. Chidinma began her examination, her hands steady but her mind alert. She started with Kemi's vitals, methodically checking her pulse, temperature, and breathing. But something was off. As she moved to examine the lower part of Kemi's body, she hesitated for just a fraction of a second. It was instinctual, a gut feeling she couldn't quite explain. Her gloved hands moved carefully, and then she saw it. Her breath caught in her throat. For the first time in years, Chidinma's steady hands trembled ever so slightly. She blinked, as if her eyes were playing tricks on her, but the image before her didn't change. It wasn't something she had read about in textbooks or encountered in her years of training. It was something rare, something unexpected. Something that would challenge everything this family believed, everything they feared. The girl's mother, noticing Chidinma's hesitation, leaned forward. What is it? Is she going to be okay? The father stepped closer, his face darkening. What are you looking at? Tell us what's wrong with our daughter. But Chidinma didn't answer immediately. Her mind was racing, running through medical knowledge, searching for the right words to explain what she was seeing without causing alarm. She turned her head slightly and said, I need to call for a doctor. The mother's face crumpled with worry. Doctor? Why? What's wrong? Chidinma hesitated again, her professionalism warring with the weight of what she had to say. Finally, she looked at the mother and father and said softly, Your daughter, she's special. But I need to confirm a few things before I can explain. The father's jaw tightened. Special? What are you saying? Speak clearly, nurse. What is wrong with her? Chidinma met his gaze, her voice calm but firm. I will explain everything once the doctor arrives. Please, stay with your daughter. She needs your support. As she stepped out to call for her supervisor, she could feel the tension in the air behind her. The mother's whispers had stopped, and the father's silence felt louder than words. Something told Chidinma that this wasn't just a medical emergency. Whatever this was, it ran deeper than what her training could prepare her for. She dialed the doctor's number with a steady hand, but her mind was far from steady. In all her years of service, she had never felt this uncertain, this unprepared. And deep down, she knew that by the end of the night, nothing would be the same for Kemi, for her family, or for herself. After a while, the doctor's phone rang. "There is an emergency at the ward, sir. You need to come quickly," said Nurse Chidinma. "All right, I will be on my way soon," said the doctor. Nurse Chidinma stood frozen for a moment, waiting for the doctor. After a while, she returned with Dr. Tosin. The tension in the room hadn't eased. The father stood by the door, arms crossed, while the mother hovered over Kemi, stroking her hair and murmuring softly. Dr. Tosin greeted the family warmly, his demeanor calm and reassuring. "Good evening, I'm Dr. Tosin. I understand you're worried about your daughter, but we're here to help. Nurse Chidinma has briefed me, and I'd like to take a closer look." The father stepped forward, his tone defensive. "Look at what? What's wrong with her? Why can't you just treat her and let us go home?" Dr. Tosin remained calm. "Sir, we're trying to understand what's causing her symptoms. To do that, we need to examine her further. I promise you, everything we do is in her best interest." Reluctantly, the father stepped back, allowing Dr. Tosin to approach the stretcher. Chidinma stood by his side as he began his examination. When he reached the area that had stopped Chidinma in her tracks, he paused. His brow furrowed slightly, but he didn't say a word. After a moment, he straightened up and turned to Chidinma. "Prepare the patient for further tests. We'll need imaging and a blood panel." The father stepped forward again, his voice rising. "Tests? What are you looking for? You're hiding something from us." Before Dr. Tosin could respond, the mother broke down, tears streaming down her face. "Please, just tell us what's wrong. I can't take this anymore." Dr. Tosin sighed, his tone gentle but firm. "Your daughter's condition is rare. She has characteristics of both male and female anatomy. We need to conduct tests to understand her internal structure and determine the best course of action for her health." The room fell silent. The father's face turned pale, his rigid stance faltering. The mother's sobs grew louder as she clutched Kemi's hand. "I knew it," she whispered. "I always knew something was different." The father glared at her. "What do you mean, you knew?" The mother hesitated, her voice trembling. "When she was born, the midwife noticed it. She told me to keep quiet, to never speak of it. You said it was a curse, that we should forget it and raise her as a girl." The father's face darkened. "And you listened to that midwife? You should have told me. We could have done something then." The mother shot back, her voice breaking. "What could we have done? Take her to a shrine. Let them call her an abomination. She's our child, and I was trying to protect her." Dr. Tosin raised his hands, his tone firm but calm. "Please, both of you. This isn't about blame. This is about Kemi's health and future. We need to focus on what's best for her." Chidinma stepped in, her voice soft but resolute. "We've seen cases like this before. With proper care, Kemi can live a healthy, fulfilling life. But we need your cooperation." The father stared at the ground, his jaw clenched. Finally, he muttered, "Do whatever you need to do. Just fix her." The mother looked up, hope flickering in her tear-streaked eyes. "You can help her?" Chidinma nodded. "Yes. But we'll need time, and we'll need your trust." As the medical team prepared to run the test, Chidinma couldn't shake the feeling that this family's journey was only just beginning. Whatever they discovered about Kemi's condition, it would challenge everything they thought they knew about her, about themselves, and about the world around them. The air in the hospital room was thick with tension. As Nurse Chidinma began to prepare Kemi for the additional test, the door slammed open. Kemi's father stormed in, his face a mask of fury. "You will stop this nonsense right now," he bellowed, his voice echoing in the small room. Chidinma froze, her hand mid-motion as she adjusted a piece of equipment. "Sir, I understand this is difficult for you, but your daughter's condition requires medical attention." "Difficult?" the man interrupted, his tone dripping with anger. "You think this is just difficult? Do you have any idea what you're doing? What this would do to my family? Do you want everyone to know about this shame?" Kemi's mother flinched at his words but didn't speak. She held Kemi's limp hand tightly, her lips trembling as she fought back tears. Chidinma, however, stood her ground. "With all due respect, sir," Chidinma said firmly, "this is not about shame. This is about your daughter's health and her future. If we don't act now, you don't understand," the father shouted, pacing the room like a caged animal. "Do you know what will happen if this gets out? The spirits will punish us." His words hung in the air, confusing the medical staff but not his wife, whose head dropped lower, her face clouded with guilt. Dr. Tosin, who had been standing quietly at the corner, stepped forward. "Spirits?" he asked, his tone cautious but curious. "What are you talking about, sir?" The father turned to him, his expression wild. "Years ago, when she was born, we took her to a traditional healer. He told us that she was cursed, that she was unnatural. He said we must hide her from the world or the spirits would destroy our family. We've kept this secret for 16 years, and now you want to ruin everything." There was a moment of silence, broken only by the faint beeping of the monitors beside Kemi. Chidinma took a deep breath before speaking. "Sir, I understand your fear, but curses and spirits don't decide medical conditions. Your daughter needs help, real help. And the longer you delay, the harder it will be for her." But the father wasn't listening. His voice dropped to a low growl, full of desperation. "No one can know about this. No one. If you tell anyone, you'll bring shame to this family, and to me." He pointed a shaking finger at Chidinma and Dr. Tosin. "Promise me. Promise me you won't report this to anyone." Dr. Tosin tried to reason with him. "Sir, as medical professionals, we have an obligation to provide care and, in some cases, inform the appropriate authorities if it concerns the patient's well-being. This isn't about shame, it's about saving Kemi's life." But the father shook his head violently. "No. No one will take her away. No one will turn her into a spectacle." He turned to his wife, his voice sharp. "We are leaving. Now." The mother didn't move, clutching Kemi's hand as tears streamed down her face. "She's too weak," she whispered. "She won't survive if we take her now." The father clenched his fist, torn between his pride and his love for his daughter. For a moment, it looked like he might explode, but instead, he stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. The hospital was quiet again, for a while. But secrets have a way of slipping out, no matter how tightly they are held. A junior nurse had overheard Chidinma and Dr. Tosin discussing Kemi's condition. She didn't mean to eavesdrop, but curiosity got the better of her. By morning, whispers were spreading like wildfire. "Did you hear about the girl in room 3, one nurse murmured to another. "They say she's different." "Different how?" the other asked, leaning in. "She has both You know, male and female parts. The story spread beyond the hospital walls, reaching the ears of villagers by midday. By afternoon, crowds had begun to gather outside Kemi's family home, their voices a mix of curiosity, fear, and judgment. "She's a child of two worlds," someone whispered. "No, she's an abomination," another said, their tone harsh. The family, already under immense strain, now faced the weight of public scrutiny. Neighbors pointed and whispered, children were shooed away from the house, and friends who once stood by them now kept their distance. Inside the house, the father paced angrily while the mother sat by Kemi's bedside, her face a mask of worry and exhaustion. "This is what I was afraid of," the father muttered. "Now everyone knows. They'll never leave us alone." As the commotion outside grew louder, Kemi's eyes fluttered open. Her vision was blurry at first, but as she blinked, she saw her mother sitting beside her, clutching her hand. More, Kemi whispered, her voice hoarse. Her mother gasped, leaning forward. "Kemi, you're awake. Thank God." Kemi's lips trembled. What's going on? Why is it so loud outside?" Her mother hesitated, her eyes darting to the window. She couldn't bring herself to explain, but Kemi was persistent. "Mama, please. Tell me." Tears filled her mother's eyes. She took a deep breath, her voice breaking as she spoke. They know, Kemi. The villagers. They know about your condition." Kemi's face twisted in confusion and then horror as the memories flooded back, her weakness, the hospital, the looks on the faces of the nurses. "My condition," she repeated. "What do you mean?" Her mother's tears spilled over. "Kemi, you're special. You were born different. You have both." The words hung in the air, heavy and unshakable. Kemi stared at her mother, her eyes wide with disbelief. "So I'm a monster," she whispered. "Is that why everyone hates me?" Her mother's heart broke at the pain in Kemi's voice. "No, my child. You're not a monster. You're my daughter, and I love you more than anything in this world." "But they don't," Kemi said, tears streaming down her face. "They're outside, calling me names. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you hide this from me?" Her mother sobbed. "I was trying to protect you. I didn't know how to explain it. I was scared of what people would say, of what they would do to you. But I see now that hiding it didn't protect you. It only hurt you more." Kemi turned her head away, her tears soaking the pillow. "I don't want to be different," she whispered. "I just want to be normal." Her mother reached out, stroking her hair gently. "You are normal, Kemi. You're strong, and you're beautiful. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." But as the voices outside grew louder, Kemi couldn't help but wonder if her mother's words were enough to shield her from the storm that awaited. The crowd outside Kemi's home had swelled. Men, women, and even children stood clutching lanterns and sticks, their voices merging into a chaotic roar. "She must leave this village," someone shouted. "She'll bring bad fortune upon all of us. We have to take her to the shrine," another voice added. "Only the spirits can decide her fate." Inside the house, Kemi cowered in her mother's arms, trembling as the noise outside grew louder. Her father stood near the door, his jaw clenched, his fist balled at his sides. He could feel the weight of their judgment pressing down on him, the shame threatening to crush him. Nurse Chidinma and Dr. Tosin arrived just as a group of villagers began banging on the door. Chidinma's heart raced as she pushed her way through the crowd, raising her voice to be heard over the commotion. "Stop this madness," she shouted. This is a child. A human being. She is not a curse. The villagers turned to her, their faces a mixture of anger and confusion. One man stepped forward, his eyes burning with fury. "You don't understand," he said, pointing an accusatory finger at Chidinma. "This isn't natural. She'll bring disaster to our crops, to our families." Dr. Tosin tried to calm the mob, his tone measured but firm. "What you're calling a curse is a medical condition. It's rare, but it happens. Kemi is not a threat to anyone." The man sneered. "You think your city knowledge means anything here? This is our village, and we know what happens when the gods are angry." The crowd erupted again, their voices rising in a cacophony of fear and superstition. Suddenly, Kemi's father stepped out of the house, slamming the door behind him. His presence silenced the mob for a moment. "You will not touch my daughter," he said, his voice low and steady. The man who had confronted Chidinma stepped forward again, his stick raised. "If you won't protect the village, then we will." Before anyone could react, the two men were grappling, fists flying. The crowd surged forward, some trying to pull them apart, others egging them on. Chidinma felt panic rising in her chest as the scene descended into chaos. She grabbed Dr. Tosin's arm, her voice urgent. "We have to get her out of here. Now." Under the cover of night, Chidinma walked quickly. With Kemi's mother's tearful blessing, she wrapped Kemi in a shawl and helped her out the back door. Kemi's steps were unsteady, but her determination shone through. "Where are we going?" Kemi whispered, her voice shaky. "Somewhere safe," Chidinma replied. "You'll see." They reached Chidinma's car, parked a short distance away, and slipped inside. As Chidinma started the engine, she glanced back at Kemi, who was huddled in the back seat, her eyes wide with fear. "Kemi," Chidinma said softly, her tone reassuring. "You are not a curse. You are not an abomination. You are a person, and you deserve to live your life fully. Do you hear me?" Kemi nodded, though tears streamed down her face. The journey to the city hospital was quiet, the only sound the hum of the engine and Kemi's occasional sniffles. Chidinma kept her eyes on the road, her mind racing with thoughts of what awaited them. At the city hospital, Kemi was admitted immediately. The doctors were kind and professional, explaining her condition in simple terms that she could understand. "Your condition is called hermaphroditism," one doctor said gently. "It means you were born with both male and female reproductive organs. It's rare, but it's not something to be ashamed of." Kemi listened intently, her fear slowly giving way to curiosity. For the first time, someone was speaking to her, not about her. The doctors outlined her options, including medical treatments and counseling to help her navigate her unique journey. Chidinma stayed by her side, offering words of encouragement and support. Days turned into weeks, and Kemi began to find her footing. She started counseling sessions that helped her understand and accept herself. Though the road ahead was uncertain, she felt a flicker of hope for the first time in years. Chidinma, too, felt changed by the experience. As she sat in the hospital waiting room, she reflected on everything that had happened. She had always believed in the power of knowledge and compassion, but this journey had shown her just how transformative those forces could be. Sometimes, the greatest battles are fought not with swords, but with knowledge and compassion. Kemi's journey was far from over, but she had taken the first step toward a life of self-acceptance and hope. And for Chidinma, the night that had begun with fear and uncertainty ended with a renewed sense of purpose, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, light can always find a way in. As Kemi began her new life, the small spark of hope she had been given grew into a flame, burning brightly. Though the path was still long, she knew that the love and understanding she had found would carry her through. For Nurse Chidinma, her journey with Kemi had not only changed their life, it had changed her own. The bond they shared would last long after that unforgettable night. But now, we want to hear from you. What do you think about Kemi's story? Can you imagine the weight of the struggle she faced, and the courage it took to stand up in a world that misunderstood her? What would you do if you were in Nurse Chidinma's shoes, fighting for justice and compassion in the face of fear and ignorance? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you believe in the power of understanding and compassion. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for more powerful stories like this one. We need your voice, your support, to keep sharing these important lessons. Together, let's keep breaking down the barriers of judgment and embrace the uniqueness of every individual. Thanks for watching, and remember to support our channel by subscribing for more inspiring stories like this. See you in the next video.